Okay, welcome to Randolph Martin's Friday Night Sports Talk. We've got a fellow presenter on tonight. We've got Baz from World of Sport, who's got his own show on Sportanarium. How you doing, Baz?
I'm good, you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. So tell us about your show then. What's your show?
Yeah, so it's called World of Sport TV. It's on YouTube. It started off as Baz's NUFC, so I'm obviously a big Newcastle fan, and all I was doing was Newcastle content. But I decided, there's lots of YouTubers out there flooding the market with Newcastle stuff, so I decided to try and, make it a little bit more accessible for other fans other than Newcastle fans. So I cover cricket, Newcastle. I do a Channel 69 news show to cover all the news in a week rather than people watching Sky Sports that can watch me on repeat instead, saying the same thing over and over again, just like Sky Sports do. So it's a bit of fun. I've got loads of people on it who do it. And I do a Premier League roundup on a Tuesday night as well. That's really fun, talking about all the fixtures. And I'm hoping to get used to involved after we've had this show, and we'll have a good chat about it.
Yeah, definitely. The World of Sport then. So if somebody wanted to go and find your site, what would they type in?
World of Sport TV in YouTube. That should come up with my channel, and they'll see my logo. It's the Tyne Bridge with a world on it. It's quite a cool little thing.
Okay, cool. So, how you doing, Matt? Fresh trim?
Oh, thank you very much. A lot better than the Arsenal result, at least. Max Payne with a nice new haircut, at least. Wrexham didn't do so well, and I'm not too happy with the Wales squad announcement either. Yet again, we've picked one striker, when Kiefer Moore's definitely going to get suspended for the next game because, size of those bloody elbows. Apart from that, not bad. How are you, mate?
Yes, not too bad. Good feedback from last week's interview. Gained 1,000 followers on Twitter in 7 days, so we must be doing something right.
Well, to be fair.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was a good interview. Obviously, we're back to sport this week in football. Obviously, the Premier League. It's a couple of games in, and you're looking at. I suppose it's too early to call, but the signs are there for certain teams with certain results. I suppose Arsenal would be one of the standout ones for a team that's normally middle of the table or higher, and second from bottom, 2 losses against 2 teams that one you'd expect them to lose and one you'd expect them to win. So, what are your thoughts? I suppose on the scores, but also on the selection of Lacazette and Aubameyang left out and of the starting lineups and coming on. So they're obviously back from sickness, and I think one of them or 2 of them are starting. Was it tonight they're playing, or were they on last night?
They're playing tonight, yeah.
They're on tonight, and I think Aubameyang starting. It's only a couple of days after 2 or 3 days after they've played on the weekend. You can't be unfit to play due to sickness and then 3 days later be okay. Surely you'd have to have a bit of training in between from something like COVID to bring you straight back in. So, what are your thoughts on the? I suppose Arteta's selections, and it's a bit weird.
That's been a bit strange. I think, of course, with the illnesses, I don't know if they've been confirmed as COVID illnesses, but if there's stuff like that, they can't be around the camp. I know Aubameyang was fit for the Chelsea game because he came off the bench. Why are we not starting him? Absolutely no idea there. You're going to put Gabriel Martinelli in, who's about 19 or 20. He's played well when he's played for us, but he's just come back off a big injury. I think he re-aggravated it as well at the end of last season, so he's had to come back again in effect. You're starting quite a few inexperienced players in a game like that, and just having performances with no tenacity, no passion. I think probably the best players in the Chelsea game, in my opinion, were Smith Rowe. He had an all right game, maybe made a few decent runs and a few half chances. And that Sambi Lokonga, the new signing from, I think it was Anderlecht in Belgium, 2 21-year-olds sort of putting in semi-decent performances when you got 5 or 6 senior players in the side who, to be honest, as an Arsenal fan, just look like they don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Granit Xhaka supposedly had a deal agreed with Roma, or I think we were stickling over the price tag, but they'd agreed personal terms. He was 9/10 of his way out the door, and he's back at the start of the season captain in the side.
Was he captain again, was he?
He was,
he
yeah.
captain again?
He
Crazy.
was, both games of the season. And, we've got players like Lucas Torreira, who he said before he's not happy in London and he would ideally like to move back to Italy. I can't quite remember who we signed him from. It was a mid-table Serie A club, I think. But, we've loaned him out yet again, or they're pretty much agreeing a deal to loan him out. We've got players like that sort of being sent here, there, and everywhere, where they should honestly, if they don't want to be here, just be sold and that money reinvested into improving the squad. But I think now we've spent about 140, 150 million with Arteta, or maybe even just this window. I can't remember the statistic, but I think Bakary Sagna actually said it the other day in the media. There's sort of no spine of this Arsenal team. There hasn't been for a while, to be honest with you, with the players we've got rid of. And, they're bringing in youngsters, which is a good thing, but we've got pretty impeccable youth set up. You look at the players that have come through that in the last few years. Saka, Willock, Maitland-Niles and Nketiah. Could keep naming him for the next 20 minutes.
Please don't.
And I know, bore you to tears. But, we're bringing in sort of youngsters from off the continent who haven't played that much first team football to replace players we've either bought to use for a few years towards the end of their career and it's not worked out and we've shipped them on. And, Willian's supposedly on his way out to Corinthians for free. That's not a bad thing, but, I still can't work out why we signed him in the first place. We've paid him, I don't know the exact wage, but it's going to be over like 120, 30 grand a week to stay in London for 2 years. And what's he done? I think it took him till February or March to actually provide an assist, and then March or April to provide a goal for the team. So you look at the recruitment and you just wonder what the hell's going on. But yeah, no passion in either performance. We just didn't look up for it against Brentford, and you can blame it on new stadium, or like first time the fans have been in that new stadium, first sort of opening game of the season. But a team like Arsenal should be making those excuses. We shouldn't be the team that looks like the Championship side that's just come up to the top flight for the first time in 74 years. I just don't know if this squad or this manager is really the personnel or sort of the group of personnel to drive Arsenal back towards where we were maybe 10 years ago at this point. Because if it keeps going like this, we're not going to be contending for titles anytime soon. But we've always sort of been more of a cup team, but I can't even see us making a cup run with that squad, to be honest.
I think, two things for me. One would be, I think, was Aubameyang captain last year? He had the armband, didn't he, at some point?
Yeah, it was agreed with the new contract, I think.
So if he's injured, you pick somebody you think, right, okay, you pick somebody that's reliable, that's a leader, and you pick Xhaka, who, how many times has he been sent off in the last 2 seasons? How many yellow cards, how many red? He's got to be in. You couldn't count them on one hand. It's got to be 6, 7, 8 times he's been sent off, probably more than anybody else in the Premier League. And you choose him as a captain. But if you look at your best 11 players on the pitch, obviously because of sickness and this, that, and the other, they can't be there. But you've got Saka was there, and then they replaced him. I think did they replace him with Aubameyang in the last game? I'm sure he came off, or he didn't start one of the games, came on, but then he was substituted. And I just don't think there's just no structure there. On the players that they're buying, it's like, the fans are under giving us pressure, so we've got to buy somebody. And then it's like, okay, well, who do we need? We'll buy him because he's cheap. We'll buy him. It doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason why they're buying the players that they're buying. And for me, Willian, I just don't think they've given him enough. He was brilliant at Chelsea. You don't become not brilliant overnight. He was one of their, I suppose Kante and a few others arrived. He was like pushed aside slightly. But if you went back, I suppose 3 years, his assists were probably as good as anybody in the Premier League. Maybe obviously De Bruyne and a couple of others. But he's a top flight player. He's an international player. He's not old. I don't know what old he is. He's probably only early 30s, maybe, if that.
32, something like that, I think.
If that. So you don't go from being that good to being that bad. You might go from being really good to being next level down, but that's still better than anything else Arsenal got in midfield. So I don't know why Arteta didn't give him a run. You can't play without having a good run. You take any of these players out for 3 or 4 weeks, when they come back, you're gonna need 2 or 3 games to get, and he just didn't get that. That was my problem with Willian. I think he'll go abroad now, and be kicking ass again. You watch.
Yeah, no, he was firing goals in as well when he was at Chelsea. I think for a few seasons in a row he got over 10. I don't know if he had some sort of run with it, but he bended in free kicks as well. I remember him being very dangerous from a dead ball. And I don't know if he just didn't like the atmosphere around the sort of camp and in the dressing room, maybe. But we bought like David Luiz over as well at the same time, so sort of either compatriots on them, both former Chelsea players, so you'd like to think they'd be able to get on. And I think Edu's involved in the recruitment setup as well, so another Brazilian. But I guess he didn't get a fair crack of the whip. But it was around the same time Pepe came in. There's a big transfer fee surrounding that, so. He hasn't really started to perform yet, apart from the end of last season, where I think he got sort of 6 or 7 in March and April, or April and May. He sort of had a decent run of form. He's in play bloody scoring, to be honest with you. But again, he's a young player we signed for a lot of money, and he's just not paid back that transfer fee at all. But so he's come across from Ligue 1. I think he was playing for Lille before. He was the top scorer behind Mbappe, but I think a good chunk of his goals came from penalties. So one of those things, really. I'm surprised he hasn't looked to be moved on this season, but maybe sort of with the fee, we're not going to recoup anywhere near what we paid for him, so it's probably not a smart investment. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of missing pieces in this side, but if any, do you think there's a position we should look to improve on before the end of the window? Because I think we've got about a week now. Is it next Tuesday? So.
Well, you've got both your strikers are fine. Lacazette, Aubameyang, I think that they score goals every season. All day long. There's enough goals between the two of them if they both, and you've got Saka. You've got Saka there who's a provider for them. You've got players. You probably need a midfielder. To go with him, maybe two. As you said, you've got enough youth there, but you need a couple of leaders, and Xhaka's not one. I say he's just unreliable. Defense, if you're conceding, it's 2 against Brentford, wasn't it? How many was the other game?
2-0 in both games.
Yeah, so 4 goals for and none against. So you've got your 4 goals against and none for. So you've got to improve, obviously, on that. And I just think that it comes from the midfield. Defence, I don't really know much about Arsenal's defence. But you conceded 4, 2 against Brentford. First game of the season, as you said, they're a new team. And they should have been the ones nervous. And you should have definitely come away from with a win. If we move on to a team, obviously, that's higher in the league than Arsenal, we'll come to Newcastle.
Can I say a few things about Arsenal first, if you don't mind? Listening to all that stuff. There's a few big problems at Arsenal at the moment. First of all, they spent 125 million on my eyes on a load of crap. Because you got Ben White there, you got the goalkeeper they signed, and there's someone else, and I've never even heard of them, to be honest with you. 125 million for those 3 players is bad business. Then you've got Lacazette and Aubameyang, who were injured, fair enough. I understand why they didn't start Aubameyang at the weekend, because they were playing Chelsea. They saw that as a game that what's the point in risking them too early, bring them back in next week because they were probably going to get beat. The other thing is, why did he sell Willock to us? 25 million, box-to-box midfielder. He scored 8 goals in 9 games for us when he was on loan for 6 months. And Arsenal are crying out for a box-to-box goal-scoring midfielder. And it's like, we're over the moon we've got him, but I just don't understand it, looking at an Arsenal point of view, is why they've let go of such a youthful talent. He's only 22. He's still got a chance to grow into the Arsenal team if he's given a chance. But yet your owners have seen the money to try and invest it elsewhere. But personally, the players you've signed, they're not as good as Willock. So it baffles me. I just don't get it. And the thing with Aubameyang as well, as soon as he signed that new contract, that was it for him. I saw nothing from him all last season. That showed that he really wanted to be there for the fans and for the club. I think he was there because he got a big contract.
Yeah, no, I'd 100% agree with that thing about Aubameyang. Like the amount of speculation going into the summer after winning the FA Cup, it is just a case of him getting his feet under the table and being cosy. He signed on to a bumper contract like that sort of towards the end of the prime years of your career. I'm surprised we honestly haven't looked to move him on, because I think I don't know how true this rumor was, but I think Barcelona were looking to offer Coutinho for him in like a swap type deal. So I definitely would have taken that to sort of improve our sort of playmaking around the sort of the 10 area, and he can play out wide left as well. He's a pretty decent player when he was in the Premier League. I quite enjoyed watching him.
That would have been a huge transfer. Yeah. Coutinho is fantastic.
I was quite irritated when we let Willock go as well, because like you said, exactly the type of player we're crying out for in the midfield. He scored countless times for us in the FA Cup in Europe when he has been played in that role. I think he can play out wide as well, like sort of wide right. So he's just a very creative player, really good sort of dribbling, good range of passing. He likes he's good at getting stuck in and trying to break the ball down as well. But we don't have enough of those type of players in our midfield, and that's why we're struggling. Like Randolph said, Jack is an absolute liability. The reaction he had in the Crystal Palace game, sort of after being subbed off and booed and thrown his shirt to say he should never been captain again after that. I'm surprised he even played a game for us again after that, to be honest, considering Chesney basically got kicked out for having a cigarette in the showers after getting beat. So, I think that's a bit worse, actually, smoking indoors. But I don't know what's going on. I think it's probably a lot of players who've got big egos or fragile egos. I don't know if they're basically the same thing, but so I don't think Arteta's ever had the dressing room, so to say he's lost it is probably a bit of a over-exaggeration or a bit of a compliment for him. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he could be a good coach, but I don't know why he's been parachuted in, apart from he's a former club captain who was Pep Guardiola's assistant. Like me and Randolph say this all the time, like it's just a revolving door of managers, or like with Frank Lampard, a player comes in, maybe does 1 year at a championship team and then gets sort of promoted into top flight job. It's makes absolutely no sense. What other job in the world does that happen? You have to work your way up everywhere else. Why shouldn't it be the same? And
there's no such thing as a you could be the best player in the world. You could be a rubbish manager. It doesn't. The two jobs are totally different. It's like saying, somebody's a brilliant binman, and they go and put him in, we're going to make him managing director of Pickford's, removal van because he knows what he's doing when he's doing the bins. It's just the two. They just don't equate. And we've seen it over and over again. You got Guardiola. Okay, he's done well. He's gone from a player, but he went through ranks. You got your coaching badges. There's quite a few guys that did like Giggs. Giggs went through, got the coaching badges while he was a player. Obviously, he played till he was 40, 41, so he had plenty of time to do coaching badges. He didn't retire early. But you got players like Rooney. Hopefully Rooney stays where he is for 2 or 3 years, moves up slightly to a little, and then maybe eventually in 10 years' time, then he could take over a bigger club if he's not, sleeping with grandmothers or whatever he's doing. But you got players like Lampard. Kenny Dalglish did pretty well, but you look at some of his record, and the decisions that he made were really poor. Kevin Keegan. Brilliant player, one of the best. Newcastle, one of the best players with Liverpool in his day, right up there with Dalglish. But then you look at his managerial, what's the word?
Record.
Not so much. I don't know the record, but
never won a trophy though, did he?
Well, yeah. There's that. But I was thinking on, it's his style of play was right. Okay. Yeah. We'll spend 100, you probably know the stats better than I do, but I remember back in the 90s, it was like, okay, we'll have spend all the money on Ginola, on Asprilla, on midfield, and strike force was probably one of the best in the world. And they'd score 3 goals, but then they'd concede 4. And you're like, seriously, you spent 250 million or at the time, ridiculous amount of money on the front 6. And then that's all they had in defence was Warren Barton, Philippe Albert, who was...
Albert was brilliant.
He was a brilliant player, but he'd score goals from central defence. He was like, I suppose, kind of a little bit like what Harry Maguire does when he goes forward. He goes forward, but then if you haven't got somebody going behind and covering, and he's gone 40 yards and he loses the ball, you can be a liability as well. And Keegan was that type of manager. We'll score 3. You've got to score 4, and on quite a few times it happened, and that's why they didn't win the league that 1 year. Was down to him. That was it. No, that I'm thinking.
it's a difficult. I've had this conversation with so many people because I was only 14, 15 when all that happened. I mean, I was season ticket holder and I got the joys of going to watch that football. Now, if you said to me now, would you like to see Newcastle win something? Or would you like to go back to that era and watch all that football again? I'd take watching that football over winning the cup because the football was just absolutely sublime. You're kind of right in the way that Keegan cost us it because of his inexperience as a manager, being in that position that he was in. We're 13 points ahead going into Christmas.
Yeah.
Man United went on an unbelievable run of winning 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. And we slipped up and drew a few games and lost a couple. And that's what cost us. It was the game at St James's Park against you lot that cost us that game when Cantona scored the volley and Albert hit the crossbar. Peter Schmeichel saved 2 or 3 one-on-ones from Les Ferdinand. And Keegan just didn't have that technical ability to lift the players in a way that maybe a Dalglish could have back in his day or a Sir Alex Ferguson could have. He didn't marshal them as well as what he should have. But I would rather watch our football back then than watch any football other than maybe Barcelona because that's how good we were. It was just phenomenal all the time. And, you say we've got a Philippe Albert running up the pitch 60 yards to score a goal and he's not defending. That gets you out your seat, though.
It was awesome to watch. I remember watching it. I think you beat United 5-1 one of the games. I'm sure
5-0. I was there that game as well.
Albert chipped the keeper, didn't he? That was the 5th.
Yeah.
I remember watching that and thinking, they were. It was great to watch. And you just mentioned there, which is basically my point, was that inexperience of Keegan. If you'd been in that position at Christmas and Bobby Robson had been in charge, then there's a very good chance it would have been a different scenario. And that's the score with all of these ex-pros. There's very few. You could even make a case with Guardiola. Put him in charge of Arsenal now and see where Arsenal would end at the end of the season. Would they end up top half? I doubt they would, unless he gives them, because he had millions to spend at Bayern Munich. He had millions to spend at Barcelona. He's had gazillions to spend at Man City. And, I reckon I would do the same with that kind of money. I just don't think you've got to put managers in a lower team, like say David Moyes, what he did for Everton, or other managers who've had. I'm just trying to think. Leicester. You look at Leicester. What they've done in the last 8 years with.
Oh, they've been fantastic. With
hardly any money at all, on a shoestring. I'm just trying to look at any.
No, I wouldn't say that. They've what Leicester have done is what I would love Newcastle to do, and that's put a little bit of money into the club, but also reinvest it properly. So if you look at Leicester, they've managed to sell Maguire for 50 million and buy an absolute amazing training complex, which is going to benefit them in the future. Whenever they sell someone, they do reinvest the money, but they invest it wisely. That's the thing. And if you look at their team, they've got a fantastic team. They deserve to be where they are, and they were lucky not to be in Champions League football again this season. Yeah. But and I get what you're saying, but I think with Pep Guardiola, I think a lot of people forget this about how good of a man manager he is. What you've got to look at the players he's got.
Yeah.
Did he improve those players as well? And you look at Sterling, who at Liverpool couldn't hit a barn door. He's then scoring 15, 20 goals a season. Pep Guardiola knows, yes, he's working with a lot of money and he's working with the best talents in the world. But as a manager, he's still got to keep that group together, crush the egos, make sure the players fighting and playing as a team, but also improving the players in the areas where they falter in. And Pep Guardiola is amazing at doing that. And that's why he's won all the trophies he's won. Not just because of money, does help, but because of his coaching and his ability to get the best out of players constantly. That's my opinion, personally.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. And he's the next level up from people like, as you said, Keegan, Dalglish, all the other ones, even Rooney, all of the ex-players. He's done better than all of them because it would be really difficult to keep that. Solskjaer, I think he's done a very good job to keep, I suppose, Pogba in line with all the transfer You know, in the last 2 or 3 years, and he's managed to get players in like Sancho, you know, with his, because he's not really a name. He's not a Guardiola. He's not a you know, an Ancelotti. He's Solskjaer, an ex-player who was kind of a bit part player. He was like a super sub at United. He was never a Rooney or a Van Nistelrooy. He was the nearly man who would come on and score goals. Luckily, one of them was in the Champions League final. You know, he's done really well. I think, you know, he's so much pressure he's been under, and from day one, that's another one that's come good, and hopefully, his man management skills are similar, kind of what you're saying about Guardiola. Time will tell, because it'll take another couple of years, and you know, he's going to need to win something in the next 2 seasons. But it's good that United have given him time. A lot of clubs would have got rid of him already.
I felt sorry for David Moyes, to be honest with you, because I think if he was given time, if you look at what he's doing at West Ham now, he could have potentially done something with Man United. But again, he's used to working on shoestring budgets and getting best out of players. Maybe he just struggled being at such a high-profile club with high-profile players. I'm not sure. But the one thing I will mention about managers, if you noticed all the managers you're naming, not one of them are actually great footballers, other than Rooney. Solskjaer was like you said, a super sub. You've got Guardiola, who wasn't really actually an amazing player for Barcelona. He was an average player in my eyes. You've got Mourinho.
Dalglish.
Well, Dalglish is a different breed. He was back in the day now. I'm talking about more like now.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you've got Mourinho, who never kicked a ball, and he's one of the best managers in the world. Klopp. He wasn't a great player either, but he's one of the best coaches in the world and best managers in the world. You always find the best managers. Alex Ferguson wasn't a great player at all. Bobby Robson wasn't really a great player either. But they're the best managers in the world. You know, we always speak really highly of them. And I always find that a great player doesn't always make the best manager, but a bad player, or not a bad player, not a good player, a good or average player works harder to be a better manager. And they study the game more, and that's why they're a better coach going forward. And you mentioned the thing about Solskjaer and about Arteta being number 2s potentially to start with. Look at Graeme Jones at Newcastle. Last season, the second half of last season, if he didn't come in and help Bruce out, we would have been relegated. And again, he went to England, and look how more attacking they were in the Euros when he actually joined up with the England squad. But if you give him the number 1 position, like you had at Luton, you failed. So some people are actually better as number 2s than number 1s as well. So maybe Arteta is in that bracket. Maybe he should stick as being a number 2 rather than a number 1 as well. So it's a difficult one, because we all have ambitions, don't we? And obviously Arteta's got ambitions to be a manager, but maybe he's suited to a number 2 role.
I think it's hard when it's when you're only a few years older than the players. It's gaining that respect. I think Guardiola, he's an extra probably 7 to 10 years older, because he's, you know, I agree with you on those other players, but on Guardiola, he was a decent player. You know, he was a Spanish international. You know,
he was all right.
I thought he was better than the other ones that you mentioned. I thought you know, Ferguson was an average Rangers player. You know, Wenger was nothing. All those other ones, whereas Guardiola wasn't even. I thought he was decent, not top class, but he was a decent player. But because he's that 10 years older than Arteta, I think he is roughly. You know, Arteta's only been retired a couple of years. You know, same as Lampard. So to gain, it's a fine line between them being your mates, because he probably played with some of them. You know, and to be a colleague and a mate, and then draw that line and go, right, now I'm the manager, you've got to listen to me, to get that respect from, I don't know, say like David Luiz. Now, how is he gonna get him or Xhaka or Aubameyang, people like that who've come in? Same as Solskjaer's problem with, because he's only a few years older. You know, Solskjaer, you know, he went to Mold. He did a couple of like Norwegian jobs, did okay there, but then to jump into like one of the biggest clubs on the planet and have all those players, and like what Barry said, you're not playing this week, but why am I not playing? All because we've got 9 other world-class midfield strikers. It's finding that balance. Guardiola's done it really well. I think Solskjaer has now, if he's got Varane in, which will help Pogba, I know having that extra Frenchman in next. I think Martial's a waste of space, so he probably won't help in placating Pogba. I think it's a tough one, but yeah, Guardiola's done really well compared to the other people of his own age group. But if we go on to Newcastle, obviously 2 games in, they're just above Arsenal. But this obviously West Ham, really good start. Did great signings 18 months ago, top of the league. You're 2-1 up. I bet you were disappointed after that, losing 4-2.
Well, I can't believe I have to talk about Newcastle because I hate them at the moment, but go on. 2-1 up at half time. Game was open. Both teams were attacking. Credit to them. We deserved to be in front, but the warning signs were there. As a Newcastle fan, when you're going into half time and you're only 1 goal up, you never expect to come out and just blow an opposition away. Steve Bruce did his team talk, and that was the end of the game. As soon as we came out in that second half, we just looked terrible. He went from being open and attacking to sit back and hold on to what we've got, which is what Steve Bruce likes to do. And it just doesn't work. Our defence is a shambles. He's playing people out of position, which is not their fault, but it's Bruce's fault. He's tactically unaware how to win football games. And David Moyes changed a few things at half-time. We didn't pick up on it, and we got blown away. Literally blown away. West Ham, if they can keep players fit and the Europa League doesn't muck them up as much as what they could do with injuries, they'll be the surprise package again this season. They'll be top 6.
Yeah, they could have been top 6. They could have been pushing for very close to Champions League spot last season. It was the last 6 games where they dropped down, and so did Leicester, so did the Villa because Grealish was out, and Liverpool kind of nicked a place, and you're thinking, they was winning 1-0s and grabbing goals in the last 7-8 minutes, and it just seemed to be on their side. Well, yeah, West Ham, because of the signings that they made, and they've all gelled, and Antonio's banging in the goals. So yeah, they've got a good. It's obviously it depends on the injuries. That's their only thing. If they get a couple injured, they haven't got massive strength in depth. Apart from
this is it.
15 players.
If Antonio gets injured, they've got no spare striker. Literally everything falls on his shoulders, really. And again, he wasn't even a striker till 2 years ago, till Moyes came in and turned him into a striker.
Yeah.
And I said to a lot of friends, I said, when Man City were looking for a striker last January, they should have signed Antonio. I know he's 31, but if you need a player for 1 or 2 years who's going to score your goals, who's going to be quick up top, also have the presence that he does, the strength, Antonio would have been a great signing for Man City. And I know it sounds weird saying that because he's not a £100 million striker like Kane is, but a fit Antonio would score a lot of goals in that Man City team. And I'm shocked West Ham have actually managed to keep a hold of him, and no one's actually tried to prize him away.
I think it's just gone under the radar with all these big name players like Mbappe now 160 million euros to Real Madrid, just been turned down today. Kane staying at Spurs. I think Man City, they're not going to struggle, but again, I don't think they're going to win the Champions League without a striker. You can't rely on. Sterling could have come out this season and score 7 goals because he's that inconsistent, and they just haven't got. They've got goals from everywhere, but you've got to have a striker, and they haven't got one. It's just ridiculous.
Can you imagine if they had Antonio, though? You saw the goal he scored against Leicester, the one where he got inside the box, he held his defender, turned, scored. Those kind of goals, Man City can't score because they haven't got a striker like him. No. And if they signed him for 25 million, it's probably what it would cost them because of his age. And I think West Ham will do business because they're a city club, a bit like us, where the owners love money, and they might reinvest it in a cheaper striker, a younger one. But Man City would be stupid not to look at someone like him for the season, for at least 2 seasons, because he will do a job until they can sign Harry Kane. And I think with someone like him, they could push to win the league and win the Champions League. And that's a big statement to make because it's the West Ham player. But if you watch him, he scored 50 goals for West Ham now in 2.5 seasons, 3 seasons. That is an unbelievable figure for someone who used to be a right wing back and is now a centre forward. And I think he's worth the risk.
Well, he won Player of the Month towards the end of the season as well, didn't he? I remember he had a good run scoring goals, but like you said, he's really strong and quick up top. He could sort of like fit into the City team quite well, I think. He's not a player you'd think about. They'd probably not go after, or like you said, wonder if he's big enough name to sort of play for City. Sorry, not West Ham, but I think he could definitely do a job. And they're probably not going to chase Haaland now. We were wondering that over the summer with Aguero going, but Kane said today was it he's staying as well. He put some out on
he's
Twitter,
staying at
so
Spurs.
definitely not prizing him away. But yeah, I think we thought this last season about City though. How can they win the title or make a run sort of up the table with no striker? And they just managed to do it, slotting players in at false nine. So I don't know with Chelsea signing Lukaku though, sort of having that target man, complete forward up top, whether that sort of gives them the advantage. But I don't know. Looking how City bounced back against Norwich, I think it's clear who like 2 or 3 title contenders are this year. I'm not sure if I want to put Liverpool in that category though, because they've only sort of beaten 2 lower mid-table teams. Or who did they play on the opening day? It was Norwich, wasn't it? And
Norwich and then Burnley. But again,
yeah,
they were convincing. They won 2-0 in both the games, didn't they? But Antonio destroyed us on the opening day of the season. I don't know if you watched the game or not, but if you watch his performance, he was absolutely outstanding. And he's the reason why we got beat that day, because he was involved in the opening goal in the first half. He then scored himself as well, and he also set up the one for Benrahma to equalise with a header. And the cross that he dug out from where he was to get the ball where it was an unbelievable cross. I was stunned that he actually got it over in the way he did. So, and again against Leicester, he destroyed Leicester as well. I'm telling you, he is an unbelievable player that's gone under the radar.
Yeah, I think they'll get if they keep him, which they probably will. They should be top 6. Just mentioned Liverpool there. I think they'll do okay because they got the defense back, but I just think that they've got rid of, obviously Shaqiri's gone, Will Allen's gone. I don't know, and they haven't brought anybody in. So you've got Henderson is aging. He's another season older. He was injured quite a bit last season. They've kept their strike forces the same, which is another year older. I know that Mane's got a couple of goals already, so he might have lost his he might have lost the monkey off his back from last season because he had a very poor season. Firmino had a poor season. Salah was probably the only shining light out of them 3. But if that's all they need is a couple of injuries, and they'll have to be buying at Christmas because they're short. Liverpool is short.
Again, you mentioned it. Injuries is the key up top for Liverpool. Obviously, it ruined the last season because of the defence.
Yeah,
but you can't see them getting that run of injuries again at the back. I think that was just very, very unlucky. The key for me for Liverpool is keeping Diego Jota fit, because he is the guy that always seems to pop up and open the scoring for Liverpool. He's done it twice in 2 games now, and he is a phenomenal player and a goal scorer. And he comes from deep, which complements the front 3 as well. He's going to be a big player for them this season, because he had a bad injury last season as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
So he's going to be huge for them this season.
He scored. Has he scored in both games for Liverpool?
Yeah, both opening goals.
He's doing exactly what he did for Wolves when he played for them last season, in my opinion. But like Firmino, he's a decent player, so probably not as a striker. In effect, he's a false 9, but he plays with his back to goal a lot, trying to sort of play back into the midfield or out wide. I think Jota's that better option for Liverpool because he's more on the front foot and looking to make those runs in behind instead of looking to receive the ball in. And they've got really good playmakers in the midfield, like so Henderson sort of sitting back and quarterbacking it about. He's done that sort of all the season before in the Champions League and last season before he got his injury. No, the season before last, before he got his injury. I just forgot 2020 even happened then. But like Liverpool have done all right, sort of tailing their end of season form and sort of start of this season form together. I think they're like 12 games unbeaten in a row, and they've got that Harvey Elliott coming through, who's apparently looked really good in the last 2 years in the Championship. I think Blackburn he was at last year. He did quite well for them. He's one of the, he looked very composed in possession, sort of quite happy to drift in and out, sort of rotate the midfield about. So, if he gets bit of a run in the team, he could be a sort of decent, more creative option for them in midfield this season. But like Randolph said, and I think you said as well, Baz, they haven't really bought anyone in. So they bought that, is it Konate in from Leipzig? He's a bit more cover at centre back, but Fabinho's getting up there in age. I think Henderson's hitting his 30s now.
33, isn't he, Henderson? 32, 33?
Yeah, Kate has been a bit inconsistent since he arrived. I thought he was going to be a big player for them. I was quite impressed with him for the Red Bull team. I think it was Leipzig as well.
It was. Yeah.
Going after the energy drink money, aren't they? But, he's just not really sort of lived up to what a lot of the Liverpool fans were saying when I heard him coming in, and what a lot of my friends who are Liverpool fans were saying. They were quite underwhelmed, I think the term is. But I think, again, it's a problem with the ownership with FSG. I don't know if it's a trend with American owners in the Premier League, because like the Glazers are fairly happy to splash money every now and again. But sort of, I think they made like 130, 140 from the Coutinho sale. They invested a lot of that back in to buy in Van Dijk and whoever else they got that season. So they've been sort of running the club on sort of near enough profit, I think. Or like in terms of transfer investment, they've been running it on like a slight profit. So I don't know if it's sort of American owners thinking, we've come in, we've won the league once, they're happy now. Because I don't know if they really understand sort of the tradition of Liverpool and that, because they bought the club for quite cheaply off Tom, is it Hicks and Gillette, George Gillette and Tom Hicks in like 2000 or the mid 2010s. I can't quite remember. But yeah, so they've probably seen quite a good return on their investment. They probably don't want to stick that much more into it, because I think they own like the Boston Red Sox as well. But I don't know, if you were a Liverpool manager, like where would you be looking to bring people in, sort of bulk up the defence a bit more, or a bit more of a spine to the midfield, or more creativity in the middle?
I just think that they just need backup. When you mention the top three, and you automatically think Chelsea, Man City, Man United. You lose 2 or 3 players, you've got 2 or 3 players who are equal to come in, on in pretty much any position, especially Man City. They've got 2 players for every position. Yeah. But even United now, with bringing in Sancho in midfield to go with the 6 or 7 that they already had, even players like Matic, Mata, who, are big part players now, they're decent enough to come in. When you look at someone like, you look at Liverpool, you take out 2 of their midfielders. You mentioned Keita. He came in with this, as you said, massive reputation, massive transfer fee. I was listening to the things coming and thinking, he's going to be a good one for the dream team. He's done absolutely nothing. Nothing whatsoever. I think he scored a couple of goals in his first 10 games, and he's done nothing since. It's been a disaster for the transfer fee. He's given them back nothing. So when you look at somebody like him coming in, if Henderson's injured, or as you said, Wijnaldum's gone, Jota was a bargain, probably one of the transfers of the last 2 seasons. A huge shock, to be fair, thinking he's come from Wolves, but he was banging in goals there, and he's carried on doing the same. But apart from, and I would 100% have him in every game, as opposed to Firmino, because if he plays every game, he scores 15, 20 goals. Firmino is lucky to score 5 to 7 goals a season. So he's not. I wouldn't even class him. I'd class him as Rooney in his last 2 or 3 years. He was a motivator and I suppose like a general, and letting everybody else score. He doesn't score goals, whereas Jota scores plenty of goals. But I just think if it was me, I'd buy 4 midfielders. 20 million each, and have them sitting there behind the 4 that are already there, because at some point you're going to get injuries. Henderson's not going to play 60 games a season, if they're playing, they're in Europe, they're doing this, that and the other. And I just think give it 3 months, and they'll probably start faltering, depending on who they're playing, because they haven't played a decent side yet. But I can't see them finishing top 5 or 6 this season, because they got no strength in depth. That's my take on it as a Man United fan.
What do you think, Baz? Where would you bulk up the Liverpool side?
I mean, they've got talent everywhere, haven't they, really? It's the strength and depth that might let them down, potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to sign a big name to strengthen the team, haven't you? If you're going to play him in the 11, it's have they got enough strength and depth to cover for when an injury happens? So is Origi good enough to come in and score goals if Salah's injured? That's the question Liverpool have to look at. Again, if Fabinho's injured, have they got enough cover to come on? They seem to put a lot of trust in their youth system. They've got, like you said, Elliott coming through. Looks a very, very tidy player. Again, I guess you're really strengthening the bench, aren't you, rather than the starting 11? That's the way I would look at it at Liverpool. I think the starting 11 is fantastic.
Yeah. That's basically exactly what I just said. I'd whack in. They've probably got an extra few in defence already, so they're not so much there. They've got a couple of keepers. They've got the 4 up front, so you could even play 4-4-2 if one or two of them get injured, but it would be in the midfield for me. Anyway, we digress from Newcastle.
Damn it! You've so much.
You did well to somehow get it across. I think first time you got it across, you're like Martin. At some point, every 6 to 7 minutes, he manages to get it back to talking about Arsenal. You've got it away from Newcastle. So what? So there's two games gone. As you said, they're above Arsenal on. I suppose it
goal
must
difference.
Be,
we scored two.
Alphabetical.
We scored 2 goals. No, we scored 2 goals. So basically, we've conceded 6, but scored 2, where they've conceded 4 and scored none. So because we've scored 2, we're ahead of them on goal difference, even though our goal difference is the same.
Yeah. So they're there. So what's your obviously you've said the assessment on the games. So where would you go from here? Obviously you've got Southampton who drew with United, so they're obviously classing that as a win for them.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because they've been poor, they sold Ings, they've sold. They're a selling club. They have been for 4 or 5 years, and then you've got Man United away and Leeds at home. So, what are your thoughts on that?
It doesn't look good, does it? We need to sack Steve Bruce. It's as simple as that. I've been saying this for a long time. How a manager can go on a run that Steve Bruce went on, which was something like 1 win in 19 games, and still have a job, it's beyond me. He would never last at another club. And the only reason why he's still got a job is because he kisses Mike Ashley's backside. And he's a yes man. He was something like the 14th choice manager to come in because no one else wanted to touch the club. We even tried to get Arteta. So you're welcome for us trying to keep him away from Arsenal, but he didn't want us. He saw Arsenal as a better club to go to, so he's probably right as well. I honestly looked at the fixtures and I thought, if we can carry on the form from the last 6 months, there's no reason why we couldn't have potentially 7 or 9 points in the first 3 games. We've got none after 2. We're drawn 0-0 with Burnley tonight at half-time in the Carabao Cup. We've both got 2 decent, strong teams out. We've got a massive game against Southampton. If we lose that, we're not getting a point we're not beating Leeds. We're not beating Man United. So we literally could be, after 5 games, sitting on 0 points, bottom of the league. So when does Mike actually pull the trigger? When does he get rid of Bruce? Because he's not good enough. He never has been. He's lingered around the Championship for God knows how many years. He's lucky to get the Newcastle job. I mean, he couldn't even get Villa up after spending the most money in the Championship that year. He got them into the playoffs and got beat in the final, fair enough. But he should be finishing 1st or 2nd with that squad he had. And there's 2 things that sums Steve Bruce up for me. He tried to sell Grealish to Middlesbrough for Jordan Rhodes at the time. So you can imagine that. And then, apparently, this is his training tactics, according to Grealish. He used to come on the training pitch, throw the ball up in the air and say, let's play. So he has to go. That's my... it doesn't breathe confidence, does it?
To be fair, it doesn't surprise me. Obviously, again, another good player. Him and Pallister together were decent players, but he's done nothing as a manager. When you've got people like him, Sam Allardyce, these managers that get sacked and then miraculously the following season or the following month, they've got a job again with another team, and they're being paid a couple of £1 million. whatever they're getting paid, but it's decent money in any walk of life. And they do nothing for 2 seasons. They get sacked again, but then it's like a merry-go-round of it's like a boys' club. It's like a gentleman's club where you may get sacked, but you're never going to leave that club. You're in that circle, and you no matter how bad you do, you're going to get a job. And it's just it's
shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shocking.
So who would you get in?
Last season we got rid of him when I thought we were going to get rid of him, which was after the Brighton game. I don't know if you saw it when we got stuffed 3-0 at their ground and we never had a shot on target and had about 23% possession. I would have took Thomas Franks at the time, who obviously the manager of Brentford. I would have took Graeme Potter, the manager of Brighton. I think he's a great manager. And then I threw a name out left field because he's a Geordie. Steve Watson. I would have given him a chance. Anyone but Steve Bruce.
Brighton. I've been. I don't follow them, but Lakey, one of the one of the presenters, he's a Brighton fan, and so I've seen a little bit of them, and they play for a team that plays on a shoestring as well. And they got money now with the sale of Ben White. They play good football. And there's quite a few teams that play good football. They just haven't got a striker to put it in the back of the net. So they'd have been a lot higher up the table last season. So he plays good football. So because obviously they're going to be staying where they are now. If you did get rid of Bruce now, who would you realistically think that you would come in? Bear in mind what you just said about loads of managers were asked last time and refused.
Yeah.
Who would you get in who would actually say yes to the job?
This is it. Not many people will work with Mike Ashley. I suppose if you look at the squad that we've got at the moment, and you look at the attacking talent we've got in Willock, ASM, Almiron, Fraser, Wilson, why wouldn't you want to work with those players? And that's the way I look at it. Because if a new manager's coming in, there isn't going to be a transfer window anyway. So that takes Mike Ashley out of the equation until January comes around, of course. But we're still hoping there's going to be a takeover by then. Talks of John Terry. I mean, I'm not a John Terry fan at all. He's a full kit knob end, and I'm trying not to swear because it's, but he's that kind of person, isn't he? He sits on the stands and then runs on the pitch and he's full kit at the Champions League final, doesn't he? I did it. So he is someone who, I mean, could he step up? I don't know. The other one was obviously Steven Gerrard, but again, why would he leave Rangers to come to Newcastle when he's got Champions League football? There isn't anyone other than Eddie Howe who's out of work. I think he's the only person we could realistically, potentially ask to come to the club. I mean, Matt Ritchie's there, Wilson's there, and Fraser's there, who he's worked with before. He might be persuaded to come and do a job until the takeover happens, and he would keep us up, and we would play a better, attractive football as well at the same time.
Yeah, good manager.
Yes,
like kind of on the Alan Kirbishley mould kind of type manager. Yeah, decent manager. What are your thoughts on Newcastle, Matt?
I was going to say, just on the Eddie Howe thing, he worked well on, so I don't know if Bournemouth have necessarily a shoestring budget, but they're a bit of a smaller club, like smaller stadium. He did quite well to sustain them in the Premier League for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that, with the resources.
And there was a long time he was actually touted for the Man United job, wasn't he, when Fergie was going to quit?
Played some really nice football for the first 4 or 5 years, so when they had the bulk of those players you mentioned available. I think he could work at Newcastle maybe, but that's the thing, there's not that many names out there probably at the minute that you could link with it. The only one that comes to mind for me, maybe Steve Cooper, the Swansea boss, I think, the old Swansea boss, sorry. I think Palace and Fulham went down, sorry, didn't they? I think Palace and Fulham were looking at him over the summer. And I think the Swansea owners were a bit peeved at him putting applications in for those 2 jobs, so they ended up mutually terminating the contract. But he's, I don't know if he plays the kind of football you'd necessarily want to see at Newcastle, but he's sort of very good at drilling a team to be solid defensively. He's worked in one of the Wales youth setups as well, and I want to say he was one of the assistant managers when England got far in one of their youth World Cups as well. But with the attacking talent you've got, I think having a sort of defensively sound manager would give you the platform to bring those players more into the game. Because me and my mate were talking the other week. It was last weekend actually, because this is a little lad's christening, so I was trying to help him buy a suit. So we were talking about the scores, and he said he was following one of the betting apps, and a load of people going on about Saint-Maximan, and he's cut above a lot of players in the league. He's so quick and tenacious, he's really good dribbling, and you've got those sort of players in your team. You want to have the platform to let them do their thing on. I think, like you said, the problem in Newcastle mainly is the owner and the manager, and unless you can shift both, but it's been that way for a while with Mike Ashley, and it's a real shame to
14
see.
years.
Yeah, I still remember seeing those Newcastle sides that were sort of pushing up towards the topper end of the league. I don't know if I remember Mike Ashley taking over necessarily. I'm not as wired into it, not following them as much as you do, of course. But been saying it for a while. You can see the fans are clearly opposed to it. I think it's just his own ego that he won't sell up, and he's just a greedy sod. But yeah, that's it. What you said there was maybe another takeover happening, or was that you just hoping for an early?
No. So basically, the Saudis were all set to. The keys were almost handed over to them. This order, managers and directors test, or whatever it's called, owners and directors test, was almost done. Then a new CEO came in at the Premier League, and literally they just stopped the whole thing. They never given a straight answer to say why the takeover wasn't approved or whether it was rejected. 20 months into a potential takeover had gone through, and the Premier League have still not answered the question yet of why. They haven't given a yes or no answer. They basically said, we're looking into it, we're still doing all this. So at the moment, there's 2 court cases going on to try and get this resolved. There's a CAT case and there's an arbitration case going on. So arbitration is basically there to try and prove separation of PIF is not an estate owned. Money wise, it's a bit more complicated for me. The lawyers and all that sort of stuff need to get involved with it, but which is really weird because Man City estate owned and PSG estate owned, but Newcastle can't be by the Saudis, which is a bit weird. And then there's a CAT case, which is basically against the Premier League on grounds of unfair justice towards the top 6. So the top 6 apparently have said, we don't want this takeover to go through. This is going to ruin our league. They're going to have all the money in the world. We need to stop it. So the CAT case is there basically for Mike Ashley to say that there's been an unfair bias against Newcastle United. We've been left in limbo for 20 months, which has then stopped the team from progressing, even though that's Mike Ashley's fault. But in his eyes, he's sold the club. He doesn't want anything to do with it anymore. He's not going to put any money into it. So he is fighting tooth and nail to get this takeover done. But it's all been adjourned until January, so we've got no idea what's going on. As fans, we know nothing. And it's so unfair because there's people who are ploughing £500, £600 in a season to go and watch them. And there's no hope, there's no excitement. It's soul destroying at times. So that's where we're at as Newcastle fans at the moment. We want this takeover. We don't care who buys the club, as long as they've got a little bit of ambition and they want to improve the team season on season. One thing that we've always said as Newcastle fans, which I think doesn't come across on the radios and with all these pundits and stuff like that, we do not demand to win things. We do not demand a team to win. We demand a team to try. That's it. That's all we want to see. It's a bit of excitement and a bit of hope going into a season, not thinking about relegation and maybe thinking about winning the Carabao Cup if we're lucky. That's our expectation as Newcastle fans. Not this, we deserve to be in Champions League football. We deserve to be in the top 4. We should be pushing to win the league every year. That's not what we were about. We never have been. And we haven't won a trophy for like 60 years.
Even still, the thing for me, when I started watching football, Newcastle, they'd sort of push for maybe Europa League or UEFA Cup, whatever it was called back then, but they were never sort of a dead cert roll over 6 points, even as an Arsenal fan, especially going to St James's Park. It's always a tough place to go and play. especially with you away fans so high, you probably can't even hear him drown out by all the Geordies. But like that's the one game that sticks out for me is that 4-4 we had. I think were we 4 up as well, and you guys, Sissoko and was it Kabai as well was playing at the time.
Yeah. So Kabai, Tiote, Papa Cisse wasn't. It was.
Solano was
I don't think Dembo was even there either. It was Warren Barton, not Warren Barton, Joey Barton. You know them lot. I think Carroll was playing maybe that game. I remember it well. All I remember is I was in the pub watching it. We're in an expensive bar. They had dodgy TV on, so we're watching it. It was 4-0 at half time. We left the bar to go to 2 doors down. They didn't have the game on, but they had cheaper pints. So obviously we're drowning our sorrows. And we're watching Sky Sports News. First goal goes in. Second goal goes in. Should we go back and watch it? No, we'll jinx it. We'll stay here. And then when Tiote scored that equaliser, we just ran around the pub going absolutely mental. It was amazing. But you don't see games like that anymore. But that was when Pardew was in charge. And I think we finished 5th that season. And that was the only decent season we've had in 14 years under Ashley. And we had a chance to kick on, and he didn't do it.
What do you think that was down to? Mainly just the unwillingness to reinvest in the side?
Yeah. It's simple as that.
As well? Yeah.
I think Mike Ashley's running the club how Arsenal are being run at the moment, which is fair play rules. You only invest what you can afford. He's running it that he doesn't have to put any money into it. The club earns its money and then it runs itself. But then that leaves nothing for transfers other than 25 million for Willock, wherever that money came from, a few sales and getting rid of players and wages. But I think he saw when we were in Europe, we only signed Anita the next season, and it absolutely ruined us. And from that point, he thought, we don't want to be that high up because it's going to cost me more money to run the club and have to invest into it. We don't want to get relegated because it's going to cost me more money to get us back up. I want us to be sitting in the bottom half of the table, making me money, making the club enough money to run it on its own. I can pull out what I want from it. And I think it all boils down to who he's had is chairmans, directors of football. You know, you look at all the clubs, we are the only club in the Premier League that has one director of football, and that's Lee Charnley. Nobody else. It's Lee Charnley and then Mike Ashley. There's no one else in there. But back in the day, you had people like Dennis Wise. What an idiot. Jimenez, who was a casino owner, ended up being a chairman for a while. How is he intelligent enough to run a football club when he runs a casino? You know, he's a gambler. And Mike Ashley is a gambler as well, and he gambles with our football club every season, hoping that we've just got enough to stay up. And he's washed his hands of it now because he knows it's going to cost him too much to keep it running. He's hoping to get his asking price, and he wants to run as fast as he can. If he dropped his asking price, there might be a few more people interested in buying it, but our club's not worth 350 million. If you ever get a chance to come up to St James's Park, before it gets sold, you can see how the ground's deteriorating. Our training pitch, our facilities are a League 2 standard. They use wheelie bins for ice baths. You know, we don't have all this fancy stuff that all the big clubs have, all these hydronic rooms and all that sort of stuff. We use Sports Direct, paddling pools, and green wheelie bins for ice baths. That's how bad it is at our football club.
I think the worst part about that is doesn't he have to pay for them, does he?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he charges the club for those paddling pools. Honestly, that's how much of a money man he is. He doesn't care.
That's just crazy. That's crazy. So you know, so where do you go from here? Literally, you've just got to wait now for somebody to come in. Otherwise, you're just going to spiral to near the bottom each year for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, that's exactly how Mike Ashley runs the football club. And it pains me as a fan because, I mean, I've stopped going. I stopped going when Rafa left because Rafa was the only hope we had of our club ever progressing. But when his contract ran out after 3 years, he decided Mike Ashley wasn't going to give him what he promised. I'm going to go to China and earn a shed load of money and then come back and manage Everton and show everyone what I'm capable of doing. Rafa was to be fair, the one that should have broke my back was Kevin Keegan being sacked again for the second time or having to walk away because he was treated badly. That should have been the warning signs for every Newcastle fan. But we still kept going back. But then when Rafa walked away, after everything he said in live, he was still loyal to a T because he saw his contract out. But everyone should have walked away after Rafa walked away because nothing was ever going to get better. And then when they appointed Steve Bruce, that should have been the last straw for everybody else. And everyone should have walked away at that point. But the problem with us as fans in a one-club city is that it's in our blood, it's our livelihood, it's our escape at a weekend. People will still go to the game because they've got the traditions. They want to go and have a pint with their mates, watch the football, regardless of how bad it is. It's just what we do. And if we had a little bit more backbone, maybe ran on the pitch, threw tennis balls on like the Oldham fans did to get the owners' attentions, if we did something, we might get rid of them a little bit quicker. I don't know. But we need to get rid of Bruce first. Otherwise, I think we'll be relegated this season. I really do.
Trouble is, it's a vicious circle, isn't it? Because everything that you've just said, Ashley's still going to be there. Who's going to come in? Yep. And it's the season started now as well. That you would have thought that you would have changed hands. Because isn't there an American businesswoman that's been? Is she to do with the Saudis then?
No, she's not American. She's actually from the northeast. She's actually around Leeds sort of area, and she went to private school around York. She knows the area very well. Amanda Staveley, she's called. She helped broker the Man City deal, but she loves the northeast, and she wants to put her own capital in with the Rubens brothers, who are rich enough to buy the club themselves, but they don't want to buy the club on their own, and they're willing to put capital into it. And then the Saudis are going to put in most of the capital. Obviously, they want to own the club. They want it as a flagship. They've always wanted a Premier League club, but they want a project. They don't want a Man United, an Arsenal, or a Man City or a Chelsea because they're already established.
Yeah.
They want to build Newcastle up and rubber stamp their idea of a football club. And it could have been great for the area as well. I mean, it's not just the football club that's been punished. It's the surrounding areas. It's the councils that are desperate for money and investment. The Tyne Bridge needs £2 or £3 million to be re-renovated because it's fallen to bits and the government aren't going to pay for it. Saudis would have just paid for it like that. It's all the businesses around are suffering because the tourism would have been booming again because if you've got that much money like Man City and like Arsenal and like Man United, you're going to get the tourists over, aren't you? Because we're a big club again. There's so much lost in the actual local area, not just the football club, but everyone. Jobs are desperate at the moment in the northeast as well. There's just so much investment they wanted to do outside of the football club as well.
Yeah, it's disappointing. It's disappointing. I'm just smiling because Aubameyang has scored 2 tonight and Pepe.
And
they were 3-0 up, aren't they?
Well.
Say that again.
I think he set Pepe's goal up as well. So
I was just looking because they're names that we mentioned earlier on, and Pepe. Oh, he's a big transfer fee. He hasn't done much, and then I think it happened the same last season. We were talking about him, and then he scored a couple on the same evening that we were doing it. I was just looking at it then.
But get a habit of doing this more often then.
Yeah,
we
want to be interviewing 3 times a week to get him to score all the time. So that's what you need, even if it's a midweek game and it's not in the it's not in the league. You get a striker and they get into a habit of scoring. That's what you need.
Yeah, I think he's very much a confidence player as well. I guess most strikers are, but like you said, when you get in that rhythm of just finding the back of the net every game, he's every club he's been at basically as well, especially Dortmund. He's just been top finisher. So he's going to slow down a bit when I can't remember quite how old he is now, but he's early 30s, so probably lose a yard of pace every season from now. But you never really lose that finishing ability. I think we've seen that with Cavani when he joined you guys. He's top player. He's going to score goals wherever he goes. So I think hopefully he can earn that 180, 200k a week, whatever we're paying him.
I think the difference between Cavani and Aubameyang. Cavani's never relied on out and out pace to get that extra yard. He's good with his head. He's a finisher, but he's never relied on pace. I suppose like Teddy Sheringham. He's got that extra yard in his head. Whereas Aubameyang is a player like, say, Michael Owen. Once you've lost your pace, then that's it. He doesn't have that diversity of change in tact like what Rooney has got or had. They didn't rely on pace where you got certain strikers. Like I suppose Mbappe, he's ridiculously fast. Take away his speed, he probably wouldn't have that speed of thought like a Sheringham. You're still frozen there, Baz, on the screen. Yeah, he's still frozen. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Aubameyang. He's fine at the moment, but when he does lose his pace, if he does lose a yard or two, I just think that he'll be ineffective to what he is at the moment. But he's still only young, isn't he? So he's not 30 yet, is he? Or is he?
I think he's like 31, 32, something like that. He's getting up there now. But he's not really lost a yard of pace, or not noticeably anyway, in my opinion, yet. So that's something to cling on to. But I don't know. I see he's pretty good sort of finishing sort of in from the left, sort of scoring from the edge of the box and bending it in. So maybe he could sort of be more like a wide target man or play a bit more centrally again. But yeah, I'd say Cavani's much better in the air. I'd say he's more of a poacher as well.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit better finisher in that regard, but more of a complete forward. A lot stronger in the air, definitely. Do you think he can lead the line all season for United, though? Because I think Greenwood's looking sort of a decent option playing as a 9, but I don't know. I think primarily he'd used him as like a right winger because he's left-footed, so like an inverted winger cutting in. But he's been scoring to start for the at the start of the season. I think Rashford can probably play as a striker if you have to as well, due to injury or anything. I guess Martial's the other one to come in, but I know you're not a big fan of him. So, do you think United have got enough up top to sort of make a charge, maybe 50 games of the season if you have a bit of a run in Europe as well in the cup run?
I'd have. I think Greenwood is becoming more and more first choice. After seeing the last couple of games and the bit parts that he's had, I'd say he's going to be playing a lot more this season. Cavani, he's getting on, but if he can play a third of the games, I'd start him. I'd start him in a third of the games because he's world class. He scored that many goals last season. When we were 0-0 or 1-0, so to get the win, Cavani would step up, coming on with half an hour to go. But I'd start him in a third of the games and then not play him. He was scoring. More strikers need to be playing week in, week out. He was coming on, not playing for 2 or 3 games, and coming on 20 minutes to go and scoring every game or every other game because he's world class. And so I would start him and I would play him for a third of the season. And then you've got Greenwood, maybe controversial, but Rashford for me is okay. He's not good enough to be a Man United first team starter. They've brought in Sancho now, who's tearing it up in Germany. Ex-Man City player. England would have done a lot better in the Euros if he'd actually played. I'd say there's enough in midfield now to complement the strike force. Yes, it would be ideal to have a Harry Kane in there, as a guy in his peak. But with the amount of players that they've got there, they should be top 3. We haven't got a Lukaku, but again, he blows hot and cold. He was very good at Everton. He's been at United and he didn't succeed. So it's Greenwood's been there. He's banged the goals in for England at all levels up to where he is now. So I'd give him a chance. He played fantastic in one of the 2 games that he's played. He was all over the pitch, and he looked very, very sharp. Keep him in there, give him a run, and see what happens. But we don't need any extra players now. We've got Varane in with Maguire. So you got We got extra cover now in centre back with because for me, I'd have Eric Bailly would be first choice, but he just gets injured all the time. Now we've got 2 first choice, and he's there as a backup. So we've got him and Delort, and we've got has Tellez gone, or is he still there?
I'm not too sure. I heard some things saying he might get shipped out, but
yeah, I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything since. So hopefully, if you've got him as a backup, you've got Shaw, you've got Wan-Bissaka. There's plenty of players in each position. You even got Henderson and De Gea, fighting it out. So there's the only weakness, if there was one, would be a Kane. But you're clutching at straws there. You've got plenty of players in each. Any other team would take most of those players from United. So it's I think Baz is back. I can see he's not not pausing up until about 20 seconds. Your picture kept pausing.
Wi-Fi must have just decided to play a few little games on me. Sorry about that.
You're in Newcastle. I'm surprised you got electricity.
I'm in York, mate. I'm posh.
But so that's I think it's too early to say, but you can't really look outside. For me, United, City, Chelsea, Liverpool now, I don't think they can compete with the squad that they've got. There's that much money being put into those other 3 teams, and then even teams like Villa now have got 100. Well, they did have 100 million. They've bought 3 players, so even they should be, I'd say, guaranteed top half with what they've got. So there's plenty of scope for a lot of these teams to be pushing for top 7, top 8. And unfortunately, Newcastle won't because of what you said.
Definitely won't be.
And Arsenal, unless they change, it's the same problem. If they're down there, and they're both down there, not really because of the players, it's the managers and their structure.
Yeah, owners, managers, terrible. Before we got cut off, you talked about Cavani, and you were absolutely spot on about him, by the way. He is a world-class striker. It doesn't need pace. He, like you said, he finds a half a yard in his head. And I said there's a few lads I work with who are Man United fans, because you're everywhere, aren't you? It doesn't matter where you're from. You always find a Man United fan. And I said to him, you signing Cavani is a stroke of genius, because someone like him in training can rub off very well on Martial and on Greenwood and on Rashford. Because if you watch his movement in the box, the way some of the goals he scored where there were shots from outside the box and they were going wide, and he just found that right place to be at the right time and flick it in with his head, where you would not see a Martial or a Rashford or a Greenwood do that. He is just superb at doing it. He's a fox of the box is what I guess he used to call them back in the day. And he's still got masses of talent on the ball. So he was key to keeping a hold of, because he wanted to go back to Argentina, didn't he? So you've done very well keeping a hold of him, and he's a cracking player. I love watching him.
Well, even he's that age now where he's going to lose his yard of pace. But when you look at some of his goals inside the box, where he's got that extra yard of pace to get round those defenders, but it's in his head. He sets off half a second before the defenders have thought, "Oh, I better go now," because he knows where the cross is coming. And you look at the majority of his goals, like you said, with his headers. If he's heading from wherever, it doesn't really matter, 7, 8, 9 yards out, he gets that half a yard in front of the defender because he's thought of it that half a yard quicker. It's not down to his pace; it's in his head. Exactly the same as Sheringham in his last few years, or Berbatov. Berbatov's one of the slowest, lethargic players you'll ever see. Looked like he was half asleep, but he would know when to do that half a yard spurt, and he was there before people. And I think for me, exactly what you've just said there about United fans. When he signed, I was raving about it, thinking, "Oh, this is fantastic. He's world class." And they were dubious. And it's like, what's wrong with you? You need to look at the bigger picture of, as you said, doing a Cantona, rubbing off on the people in training. Look at Greenwood now. He will improve so much in the next 12 months on playing with him on the training ground. And it's a big plus to have signed him for the next 12 months, because obviously we've got him for another year.
Age is just a number for players these days, in my eyes, because if you look at Ibrahimovic, he scored more goals in his 30s than he did in his 20s because he was more intelligent. He's another player who's aged so well. And it just shows if you look after your body and look after yourself, and you've still got that intelligence up top that these top players have, they can play on for as long as they want, really. I mean, Giggs did it so well. He used to rely on his pace when he was younger, but then he became a more intelligent football player, and he played on until he was nearly 40 because he kept himself in physical condition. And he still had that brain, like you said, Terry Sheringham as well. If he kept himself a bit fitter, he might have played a little bit longer. But
yeah, he played until his 40 as well. Ibrahimovic never relied on his speed, so that's why he's kept going. And then you look at there's another one in my head that a second ago now. Ronaldo was solely on his pace for the first few years, and he's now 35, 36. Supposedly coming to the end of his career, but I bet you he'll still be playing when he's 40.
People in Portugal want to go somewhere like that, and it'd still be credit to him because the dedication he's put into his life to be who he is second to none. He never had the natural ability as what Messi had, or Messi is still got, but he had that work rate, that ethic. I will be stronger, bigger, faster than anybody else, and I will train and train and train until I am one of the greatest players in the world. And hands down, he's up there. But to go on to that debate, Messi will always be the greatest player in my eyes because just that natural ability to play football was always with him at a young age. So yeah,
Here
we go, Man United fan on Ronaldo. Here we go.
No. To be fair, I'd say Messi as well because it's a tough one because Messi was at Barcelona when he was very, very young and he's come through all the ranks and he looked fantastic. Whereas Ronaldo, I said to Martin, Ronaldo was out in Sporting Lisbon and he took Keane, Giggs, Beckham, and Scholes apart as a 17-year-old, and that's why they bought him. For 19, was it 9 points or 19 million? They broke the bank at the time for this kid who they'd never seen before because they begged Ferguson to buy him because he ran rings around them in the practice game. So he obviously had it there as well. But I think Messi reminds me so much of Maradona because one, they're Argentinian, two, they're small, center of gravity. They pretty much mirrored each other. But the only difference which makes Maradona a better player for me was that he did it when, number one, you could be hacked down, you could be assaulted and not get sent off. If you look back, Martin, some of the obviously you're too young, but if you look back at some of the footage of Maradona back in the probably 79 to 86, when he was very young, he won one World Cup. He won literally on his own. There was look at his team, and there was nobody. There was nobody in that team. Whereas when you look at Messi, and he had people like Mascherano, Dybala, there was a decent side there. Another year there was Batistuta was running the line, where Maradona had nobody. There was one year where I think they beat Belgium. He scored both goals. They beat England, obviously with the hand of God, but his second one was probably the greatest goal of all time. And to win the World Cup, to drag your team from nothing and probably coked up to his tits at the same time. Would put him. Pele was before my time, but I watched a lot of coaching and young footage of him. So back in the day, he was the best. Messi's there now with Ronaldo, but for me, Maradona was above them all. If you look back at loads of his footage when he was at Barcelona, there was guys kung fu tackling him, and he was rolling over, carrying on, because he's built like Aguero, big thighs, big legs, but just incredible. And one story that I remember was it was either David Platt or it was one of the England midfielders, and he said that when he scored that goal from inside his own half, beat all the England players, that pitch had only recently been returfed and you could hardly stand up on it. And if you watch that goal with that in mind, the turn he did on the halfway line, the amount of players that he beat and scored that goal when it wasn't Terry Fenwick. There was one of the players who said you could hardly stand up on the pitch. And for him to do that, it blows your mind, really does.
Yeah. Well, it reminds, my favourite player and best ever player ever to wear a Newcastle shirt is Peter Beardsley. And if you look at some of the goals he scored back in the day, they were very like Maradona as well. On those horrible bubbly pitches, you would take on 4 players inside the box and then score from 2 yards in an open net because you took on the whole bloody team. And that Messi, yes, he did it on carpet pitches, but he scored the Maradona goal twice. He did it from on the same area. That one, and was it the cup final or cup semi-final against Atletico Madrid, where he did it on the right wing. And he weaved inside everyone and smashed it in the bottom corner. That's why I love Messi, is because he reminds me of Peter Beardsley and he reminds me of like the likes of Maradona as well. But the greatest player of our generation, and he never gets mentioned enough because of his injuries, is the actual real Ronaldo. Because if you look at his stats were off the chart. He was just unbelievable. Bobby Robson said he never saw a player like him. Zidane said he used to turn up to training and do something different every time. He almost scored the perfect goal, didn't he? Where he dummied the ball and ran around the goalkeeper, and it made him look like a fool, but he put it wide. We can talk about all these great players all night and still not come out who's number one, but we know we'll have a top 5 quite easily. They were just absolutely phenomenal.
The dummy one was the same as what Pele did, wasn't it? It was nearly an exact replica of that. Yeah. But he was picked. I think it was the USA World Cup in what year was that? Was that 90 or 94? I thought it was 90. Yeah. And he was picked. He was 60. He was. That
was Italia 90, wasn't it? And then
so it must be 94 then. So he was in the squad at 16. He didn't play, but they were raving about this kid then at 16. And then in the next World Cup he went on and scored goals. 2 in the final against France, was it? In 2002 or 98, one of them. He won the World Cup, didn't he, with 2 goals in the final. But yeah, he's right up there, with Ronaldinho, in the same squad, world class player. But I just think for me, Maradona was the next level for the reasons that you've just said. He wasn't playing on carpet. The balls they weren't like they were in the 70s, but when they were playing on bog pitches. And the ball was a bit heavier, I suppose, like George Best. Look at the stuff that he did on mud baths back in the 70s. There's probably only 7, 8, 9 players that you can go, right, okay, these are in everybody's top 10. Like a George Best, he's in everybody's top 10. Pele, Maradona, Messi, Ronaldo. So there's your 6. There's your 6 of your 10 straight away. And then there's arguments then of there's greats from the 60s, 70s, that people don't mention, your John Charleses and,
Jack Charlton.
There's so many, but those 5, 6 would just be in pretty much everybody's, wouldn't they?
Even mine, I'd say, I have seen a bit of Maradona footage, mainly because I can't remember the name of the Amazon documentary. I think it is just called Diego Maradona, but it documents a little bit of when he was at Barcelona, because it was after that he went to Napoli, wasn't it? And basically turned that team around single-handedly, like you said. He did the one World Cup with Argentina. But again, those were the days where you could just get absolutely mauled on the pitch. And I think he broke his leg or something while he was at Barca, didn't he? I remember seeing a video of him getting stretchered off during the documentary, and I think that was one of the things that made him move to Italy ultimately. But like you said, I think they play on a Saturday or a Sunday, whatever the game day is over there, and they wouldn't see him again until Thursday or Friday for training. He'd just be out with the Naples mob or whatever they call them, the mafia, just getting Larry. And to be able to do that for 4 days, sort of have a quick cleanse and get back to playing football on a Saturday or a Sunday is absolutely insane. But yeah, still, even people in my generation, I mean, I'm like 24, so people in their 20s, they'd still put Pele, Maradona, or I'd like to think they would still put like Pele, Maradona, and R9 Ronaldo and them into the top 10. But I think for me as well, players like Kaká and Pavel Nedved's sort of my first era. I remember watching football, just complete midfielders, could do absolutely everything, score goals from everywhere. Such good technical ability wise as well. So turn on a sixpence. And I think football's gone a lot different in terms of the fouls and the amount of diving now. But even in the early 2000s, you could still get a bit of a kick in, and the referees were slightly more lenient, I'd say. I think it's obviously different now with all the video technology and more continental players and English players taking on the over theatricized dives and whatnot. But yeah,
football's changed a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, back in the day when Maradona was around, George Best was around, Gaza was around, Glenn McGrath of Aston Villa, nutrition, diets, all this sort of stuff wasn't there. All the Newcastle players back in that year when we lost the title, they used to go out on the RAS on a Sunday, turn it for training on the Monday, and just absolutely cane it.
Wasn't Glenn McGrath a fast bowler for Australia?
Sorry, McGrath? Sorry, McGrath. Wasn't it Villa, the centre back? Paul McGrath. That's him. He played drunk one game and still absolutely nailed it. Gaza did it for Rangers. It's my point basically is now you'll never see that these days because of the actual physical fitness and everything that players have to go through nutrition-wise. All started when Wenger came in at Arsenal, and then everyone started cotton onto it when Arsenal were fitter, and then everyone leading up to near the end of the season. And that's what it's all nailed down to now. But like you say, back in the day, you could go out on the drink on a Friday and play on the Saturday and not have any tests or worried about anything, could you? So credit to them to do it. I don't know how George Best did it. He used to get absolutely hammered and then score 5.
Well, that was the point with Ferguson, that even in his era, when you had you mentioned Paul McGrath, you had him, you had Brian Robson, you had known drinkers, and that's why he tried to keep people. Like, there was one story of he went knocking on a door at 11 o'clock at night, and he caught gigs in like a party, and that was like the end of him, as in that's the end of your day's partying, because he tried to keep them away from people like McGrath, who had the natural ability. But as a defender back then, you didn't need to be on the ball, and he was a drinker at Aston Villa. You had the gambling and the drinking that the managers had to contend with. But as soon as you said, as soon as Wenger came in, he brought in things like when you looked at their back four of Dixon, Winterburn, Tony Adams, Steve Bould, all of them have said that he elongated their career by 4 or 5 years, because literally every game and pretty much on a daily basis they had massages. Everything was done with a method, whereas luckily for Ferguson, he had the talent there. When you look at Mark Hughes and that era, they didn't have that that philosophy. And then the Arsenal came along with the Invincibles, and it was down to Wenger for a totally different approach. And then everybody else had to bring it in.
Yeah, chicken and rice, I think it was, is what he put his players on diet for so long. And I remember Tony Adams saying, "This isn't enough. It's not filling me." And he said, "Just believe in my methods. You will see the benefit as soon as your body gets used to it." And then he did. And then, obviously Tony Adams ended up scoring that great goal, didn't he, against Everton on they won the title, when a ball over the top and he smashed it in with his left foot. You wouldn't see Tony Adams doing that if he wasn't on a proper diet.
No, exactly. And you probably you don't see any of them in the Arsenal team at the moment. Was it a final score yet, or still the same score?
We were 0-0. We're in a penalty shootout. We've missed our first penalty, and it's 3-2 to Burnley at the moment, so they're ahead.
We're 6-0 up at the moment away to West Brom, and
so that's game over.
Rolled over by Southampton, 8-0.
What do you say, Southampton?
Southampton
8-0.
Newport 8-0. Yeah, Paul Michael Flynn and Newport.
So that's great for Newcastle. Just draw 0-0 with Burnley, and we're getting beaten in a penalty shootout. And Southampton go and have a kick about and win 8-0. Just leading up to the big game on Saturday. Thanks, lads.
And if we move Oh yeah, 8-0. 8-0. And
There's a guy on Twitter, I hope he cashed out. He put his bet up, obviously, from last night to tonight. He was waiting on 3 games. Arsenal to win, Southampton to win, Newcastle to win. He had a $2,500 cash out. If all 3 had won tonight, you would have won 11 grand. I said to him, cash it out. The simple fact is, Arsenal and Newcastle will let you down. And it looks like I'm right because it was 0-0. So I hope he cashed out and listened to us.
Yeah.
Oh, Burnley have missed. It's 3-3. There's 1 more penalty each in the 5. What's going to happen? Oh, it's exciting stuff. I can't see it, but, you know.
Well, Aubameyang has scored a hat-trick. Pepe has scored 1. And Lacazette has scored 1. So that might get you into that rhythm of your strikers scoring. You know, Saka scored, which is good for the youngster to get his confidence up. And it's when you're in front of goal, if you've got that confidence to shoot as opposed to cut it back and pass like what Kane did in a couple of games of the Euros until he scored, then that could put you on a bit of a run. Who have you got in your next few games, Matt?
We have City in the early kickoff next
Saturday.
We've
missed the 5th.
That's, Newcastle are missed, or Burnley.
Yeah, Burnley are about to shoot for the win. Bollocks. We never win shootouts, ever.
I couldn't think of a worse thing to watch in a penalty shootout, honestly. Even if my team's not playing, it's still nerve-wracking. I just can't hack it. We've got City next Saturday at 12:30, so that's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah, you're going to get battered.
Something to do the early part of the afternoon, see if Ella wants to go clothes shopping or something. And then we've got Norwich, Burnley, and Spurs, other 3 games in September. And we don't have any European fixtures to worry about this year, which might actually be a good thing if the players can keep scoring. And it feels weird to be saying that, but it should be.
Burnley are through.
It's definitely...
It might be detrimental to them further down the line if they have a bit of a cup run, maybe. Could help you out in that sense.
I think it's when a team is struggling, it's definitely a good thing not to be in Europe. Because number one, what's the point in being in Europe? Because you're not going to get very far anyway. Number two, you've got more chance of getting injured because you've got your best players playing more games, and so that really, that applies to Newcastle with the Carabao Cup. Now you can. It's a bit of a cliche when people say, we can now concentrate on the league, and that's there's just so the fitness levels. You don't have to be playing twice a week all the way through the season. You've probably had to play qualifiers in certain things. I think it's a good thing for as my perspective.
For me, it's really disappointing because the Carabao Cup is our literally our only hope of winning, potentially maybe having a decent cup run again. So that's ended in the first round. And there's a very good stat I saw yesterday. Newcastle have not beaten a Premier League club in a cup game since Alan Pardew took Newcastle to the Etihad Stadium, beat Manchester City in the quarterfinal of the Carabao Cup all those years ago. We're talking maybe 10 years ago, I think it was. We've never beaten a Premier League side in a cup competition. That's shocking.
Yeah, that is.
For a team like Newcastle as well, it is.
Yeah, my next line was going to be, well, at least you've got the FA Cup. That doesn't sound too good to say.
We have not got past the 4th round of the FA Cup in 14 years since Mike Ashley took over at Newcastle. And bearing in mind, before he took over, we reached 2 semi-finals and 2 finals in 14 years.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
It's not, is it?
But on the positive side, is say you haven't got those runs to contend with. Yes, it's extra, and what you could think on the plus side is those extra games, that extra run is putting more money in Ashley's pocket.
True, but it's just that little bit of extra excitement, though, isn't it? We know we're going to be in a relegation battle, so at least if you've got a cup run, you've got something exciting to think about. You've got a game on a Wednesday night under the floodlights, which is always a special occasion for Newcastle fans. It's a beautiful stadium to be in when the lights are on. It's disappointing. I get what you're saying. Concentrate on the league, but there's not really a lot of excitement there. The cup just gives you that little bit of extra drama, doesn't it? And some hope. But yeah. my whole Twitter feed is now just Bruce out, Bruce out, Bruce out, Bruce out.
It'll probably be like that every game for the next 10 games, isn't it? Probably.
This is true.
I think a cup run as well, it can sort of instill that winning mentality in a side if they might not sort of necessarily have it at the minute. That, you know, if you're going to be in a lower table fight for survival, that could be quite crucial to a side like Newcastle. But, you know, I do think they've probably got the players to stay up. It's just the manager, like we've been saying all show. Do you think he realistically lasts 10 games, considering we're, 3, if you include the cup game into the season already?
I think he does, because Mike Ashley doesn't want to make any change, doesn't want to pay any compensation to get rid of a manager. And if he can hold on to him and he's doing just enough, then he will keep a hold of him. But if we're in the bottom 3 come 10 games, it might be too late, to be honest with you, because the run of games we've got through Christmas and New Year is like, I think 5 of our games are against the teams in the top 6, or you would expect to be in the top 6. So it's big trouble. It really is. And like I say, we needed points early on the board at this good start to the season, and we might have had a chance of staying up, but we're not getting that at the moment. Southampton is a crucial 3-point game at home. We always do well against Southampton at home for some reason. We always have. So if we lose to Southampton, to me, Bruce has got to go, but he won't, because it's only 3 games, and Ashley won't panic because he sees cash before anything else.
It's a bit of a poor state of affairs, though, isn't it? After only 2 games gone, thinking already that you're in a relegation battle after 2 games.
We knew we were in a relegation battle before the season kicked off. You know, this is why I hate when people, you know, all these big pundits say, "Oh, Newcastle fans expect too much. They've over expectations, the Champions League football, all this sort of stuff." No. If you ask 95% of our fan base what they think the season's going to be, they will say it's going to be a long, hard relegation battle. And we knew that before the season kicked off. So, you know, we literally papered over the cracks last season to stay up. We haven't invested. Our squad's exactly the same as it was last year, probably weaker because we've lost 2 players. Yes, we signed Willock, but Willock was there for the last 6 months of the season because he was on loan. So technically that's not strengthening this team or the squad. It's just getting it back to what it was. So, yeah, we're in big trouble. Big trouble.
Doesn't sound good for Newcastle. Or, well, on the up for Arsenal with their result tonight.
Well, it might help Arsenal stay out of the relegation zone.
Do you guys want to do a few predictions before we wrap up and everything today? I've made a couple of little tickers to go across the bottom of the screen with all the fixtures on, so we can...
Go on then.
Right, so City Arsenal. Does anyone want to throw a scoreline out? Because I really don't want to.
Probably 3 or 4.
Yeah, so that's about right.
I'd say 4-1. I reckon Arsenal will score because they've scored 6 tonight, so they won't be hesitant to shoot. When you're not scoring, as I say, you pass the ball sideways to hopefully somebody else has got the balls to shoot. Where they've scored tonight from quite a few different players, so I'd say City will win. So 4-1.
Yeah, I'll take 4-1. I mean, we're going to get rolled over defensively if players are getting bullied by Lukaku and Werner last week. They're going to get absolutely picked apart by De Bruyne and co. I'll take 4-1 though. Like, it'd be nice to actually get a goal in August, because otherwise we're going to have to get training clips for goal of the month at the minute, or pick a pre-season goal.
So on the screen then, so I'll go Villa to beat Brentford, Everton, Brighton, draw, Newcastle to beat Southampton, Leicester to beat Norwich, West Ham to beat Palace, and Chelsea to beat Liverpool. That's mine on there. So you just give the scores when it comes on this time.
Yeah. Man City, probably 4-0. Villa, 2-1. Brighton, Everton, that's a tough one. Desmond or 1-1. Newcastle, I'll be happy with a draw because of the way how crap we are. Leicester will beat Norwich due to COVID and Norwich's camp. West Ham will probably comfortably beat Palace 3-0. And Liverpool, Chelsea, always a ball draw when it comes to the top teams playing each other.
Sounds about right. I'll put the Sunday fixtures on in a minute. I've given my opinions about Arsenal. Let's not rehash that before bedtime. I'll say Villa maybe 1 or 2-0 over Brentford. Didn't really see much from them against the poor Palace side last Saturday. Brighton have been playing really well. I think Everton had a good showing against Leeds, but they've been a bit sloppy conceding goals. So I'll go for Brighton, maybe 2-1, another comeback for them. Newcastle, Southampton. I would have said a Newcastle win, maybe, apart from Southampton getting the result against United, because I thought Newcastle have been fairly decent going forward. It's like I've been saying today, it's just defensively. So I'll say a draw there. Leicester should, in theory, roll over Norwich with the players they'll have missing on Saturday. Maybe 3, even 4. I know it was 5 for them last week. Maybe a high score again. I'd say West Ham to beat Palace fairly comfortably. Maybe 3-0, something like that. And Liverpool, Chelsea. Maybe like a score draw, like a 1-1 or a tight. If I had to pick a winner, I'd probably say Chelsea. Just feel like Lukaku might have a good game against Liverpool. Sort of big. Well, can't really say Arsenal-Chelsea is a big game anymore, in my opinion, because we're not a big side. So first big game of the season he's played. Second game for Chelsea. So I'll say 2-1 Chelsea, just to be a bit different. Right, and on Sunday, who wants to go first? Go on, Randolph. I'll let you.
Have to wait for it to come down. Oh well, like United to beat Wolves. They're a bogey side for United over the last 3 years, but they've lost all their best players. So definitely United. Burnley, Leeds have got to get their act together. So I think they'll win. Tottenham to beat Watford pretty easily. That's quite an easy 3 there, I think.
See, Leeds haven't started as well as I thought they might. I'm going to go with a draw with that one, probably 1-1. Spurs, probably 3-0. Man United, probably 2-1. But I say bogey team, so Wolves might get a point because they still have got Jimenez up front and they're still not a bad team.
Yeah, I think, well, I've got a bit of a soft spot for Leeds, so try not to let that come into play. But Burnley, I thought they started quite well against Liverpool until they conceded. I think it was a mistake at the back for their first goal. But sort of Leeds, you know what they're going to do. They play on the front foot. They're going to come at you. I'd say maybe 2-1, 3-1. I thought Watford were going to really struggle this year, but they look really good on the opening day, or at least for 55, 60 minutes against Villa. So they might cause Spurs a few problems, but I think Nuno's got the side well drilled defensively. So maybe another 1-0 for Spurs. And the way Wolves are going at the minute, I think they might be sort of towards the bottom half of mid-table, maybe even sort of touching the relegation scrap. So depending on how United line up, I think it'd be fairly comfortable win. If they rest a few players or anything like that, it might be 2-1 or a 1-0. But a bit of a bogey team, like you said. But the spine of that bogey team mostly, I'd say, has disappeared. Like Patricio, I think his Moutinho moved on as well. Of course, Jota went in January to Liverpool. Jimenez is only just coming back. I don't think they've really bought, or I haven't noticed necessarily them bringing the players in as like-for-like replacements or even trying to necessarily improve that. But I think United should be looking to win that one comfortably. But I thought that against Southampton at the weekend and look what happened there. So.
Yeah. I just think that they won't rest players. They're trying to bring players in. So Sancho, he's on the bench in the first game, so he's only played a bit. They want to be giving these people game time. So they've got that many players in the squad that will be itching to play because it's the start of the season. There'll be no resting. Even if there's a couple of their best players on the bench, they'll be playing on, every player in that squad will want to be playing. So he'd be picking his best 11 for every game for the next 3 or 4 games. Number one, because they drew against Southampton. So there would have been a bit of a team talk there. They've got to be winning games. They can't be letting sides go 6, 7, 8, 9 points ahead. Because once they've gone, they've gone. Chelsea are up there. City lost. So that's a good yardstick to, luckily United have drawn and won, whereas City have lost and won. So if City had won, it'd have been like, oh, you're playing catch-up straight away. You don't mind playing catch-up against West Ham because you know that they're not going to be able to sustain it for the whole season. Whereas if you're 5, 6 points behind City, Chelsea, because you've drawn against Southampton, you've got to put your statement out in the first 3 or 4 games, which they haven't done yet. So there'll be no rest in their best players. No chance.
That'll probably been what the cup game was for. Did you guys enter the cup at this round, or you finished too high to be playing with us people in the league?
Anyone in Europe don't qualify for the cup
third round
until the third round. Yeah, next round.
Sorry, this is alien to me. Arsenal coming into the Carabao Cup this early. I think I was pooping in diapers the last nappies. Sorry, the last time that happened. Been watching a lot of the US Office, so my lingo's switched up.
But yeah, no, that's it for the football. There's not really much other sport to talk about. England done all right in the cricket. Anderson's still banging in the wickets for a guy that's way past his bedtime on the age group. Still one of the best bowlers in the world. So there's no other real sport to talk about. There's only been the cricket on.
Cricket was superb today. Absolutely superb. After we got absolutely hammered in the last Test match, being bowled out for 120 on the last day, when we should never have lost that Test match against India, to come back and do what we did today at Headingley, surprised at Kohli winning the toss and electing to bat. Anderson was just on fire at the top, getting Kohli early as well, and Rahul getting the top 3 out basically. And then 2 bowlers were on hat-tricks as well. It was just phenomenal today. And I put out, I've got a separate Twitter account just following cricket, and I said that Burns needs to stay in the team. There is a player in there, but playing alongside Sibley doesn't work for him because they can't rotate the strike. They're both too slow.
Yeah.
You bring Hamid in, both of them together, 120 partnership today. We're already ahead of the game. It should be over in 3 days. England should comfortably win this Test match and level up the series 1-1. Them 2 were fantastic batting.
They're not lost the wicket today. They're the 2 openers, sorry.
Yeah, we haven't lost the wicket. Literally, they're still in there. Both got half centuries. Both look very solid. Burns looked a lot better because him and Hamid are able to actually rotate the strike and take the pressure off each other at the end. And that's what was the problem when Sibley was playing. Sibley was something like 15 off 95 balls at one point, which means you're stuck at an end. Burns was getting stuck at the other end, and it was putting pressure on each other. You take Sibley out. After 2 overs today, we were on 20 runs. I thought it was a T20 game at one point, the way we were hitting the ball around, which is unforeseen for ourselves. And it just went on through the rest of the day. So it's phenomenal day's cricket. And it was a year ago today that Ben Stokes did that against Australia as well. So obviously today is a very good day in England history.
But yeah, there's nothing else. There's no I know the undercard of the boxing's been announced, and that was pretty disappointing. Knowing that I'm going to be going down to watch it, but apart from that, this Pacquiao lost, should retire now. Would have been a damaging fight if he had been fighting Errol Spence. But yeah, there's no other nothing else really in the pipeline apart from the football and the cricket. It's that time of year where it's like that transition period of the boxing will start now, September, October time, the big fights. And what's the I haven't actually looked, but the Fury Wilder fight, what's the date for that? Has it been, because of COVID, obviously it was put back. Has it been announced?
I want to say October, but I might be making that up. Have a look, see if they've got any. Oh yeah, 9th of October supposedly. Back in Las Vegas again, T-Mobile. So couple of weeks after Joshua Usyk. So
yeah.
Bit more interesting. But I mean, like you were saying before we started recording, you can just rock up to the stadium a bit later, not have to spend as much on £7 pints in Wembley. Oh no, it's at the Spurs ground. Sorry, isn't it? Keep saying flipping Wembley.
Yeah. If I turned up at Wembley, I wouldn't be able to get any pints, and I wouldn't be able to watch any boxing.
Well, you might be able to get a pint. There might be a few cans left over from the Euros, sort of behind a few of the stumps or in the planters. Does anyone have any words to say on that Jake Paul fight that's going down on Sunday night or Monday morning for us? He's taken on a former UFC champion called Tyron Woodley. I thought he was quite undervalued and underappreciated as a UFC champion. Actually, prime athlete, really high level wrestler, but unlike Ben Askren, who Jake Paul beat in his last fight, Woodley's got serious hands. He's knocked out Robbie Lawler before to win his title. He's knocked down Darren Till, who's a really good striker from Liverpool. He did finish him with a Darce choke on the floor, but he managed to get a knockdown. Stephen Thompson as well, a kickboxer with, I think he had I can't remember his exact record, but he was unbeaten as a pro kickboxer. Really awkward sort of karate style striker in the octagon, very hard to get past. He managed to wobble him a few times as well over their 2 fights. I think as well this undercard they've got Daniel Dubois fighting someone, and Tommy Fury's fighting someone else as well. Anthony Taylor, I think he is. So at least this Triller card, they've actually tried to make it a bit more like a boxing event, but I don't know if they're going to have the Counting Crows doing a concert in one of the intermissions, and then Kanye West doing 3 songs off his new album before the main event. So it's a bit of a circus, but it's a bit of a boxing versus MMA narrative, or the way a lot of us MMA fans see it. It's more of a YouTuber, mouthy child YouTuber versus actual fighter narrative. Does anyone have an opinion on that, or is it all just smoke and we should shut up about it?
I just think. Well, you go first, Buzz.
I was just saying, I hope he gets hurt, like he never gets back in the ring again, because I'm sick of him.
Oh God, yeah, so annoying.
He's not a boxer. He's just there to try and make money, which you can't blame him for trying. But people like Mayweather should look themselves in the mirror and say, why the hell did I do what I did? Because all you're doing is giving this idiot a platform where he should go through the proper ranks to become a boxer and then get in the ring with real boxers and make his career that way, like all the other guys have worked hard to do. It's an absolute stain on the profession that these guys get fights. And I really do hope he gets hurt, that he doesn't get put back in the ring again.
Yeah, I just think the opponents that he's getting cherry picked for are, yes, he might be a champion at MMA, but he's not a boxer. He might have fast hands, but I don't like Paul at all. Same as his brother Logan, who fought Mayweather. He's probably a more decent person. That when you see some of his interviews, and he's got a radio channel and stuff, and some of the stuff he does is quite funny on YouTube. Whereas this Jake Paul, the only problem is the only thing that he's got is he does have a big punch. And if he can catch this guy in the first 2 rounds, he has got a very good chance of beating him, which is really annoying because I am exactly the same. I hope he gets leathered, but there's a good chance that his opponent doesn't have the skills, the ability to do that, because he's a big guy, this Jake Paul. And with these fights, they're picking people who are, stones lighter than them. Obviously, the only reason why he picked Mayweather was, Mayweather's 40 odd, he was probably 4 or 5 stone lighter. And if Logan Paul had actually caught Mayweather with a big punch, doesn't matter how good Mayweather is, he could have knocked him down. But it's a fix anyway. There's no way in a million years Mayweather was going to lose. Like with the McGregor fight, he just stayed there, running around, made it look good, like a WWE, fiasco.
It's exactly what it is.
It's all planned. It's all planned. Whereas I think with this Jake Paul thing, it's not planned. He does have to genuinely beat him, but I think but he does have a big punch. So I think he'll probably beat this guy. And then Tommy Fury's on the undercard with the prime. It's there for him to be fighting him then next, and then it'll be a case of, right, is Fury in there for big money because he'll be offered 10 million, but is that money there to throw the fight for Jake Paul? Does he have the balls to actually beat him? Because he would beat him in a fight. But then if he does lose against Jake Paul, then that, hold on, he's just taking the money because this YouTuber, he's making tens of millions of pounds. He's bringing boxing into the next. He's bringing a lot of YouTube fans and Instagram fans across with him, that's a good thing for boxing. But the bad thing for boxing, he's the people he's fighting is cherry picked. It's a problem. So he might, for me, I think he might win his next 1 or 2 fights, But then if he does start calling out people like he's been calling out Canelo, all the money in the world wouldn't pay Canelo to lose. So if that ever does come up in like a year, 18 months time, then that would be the I pay to watch that fight. But these other fiascos, I wouldn't bother.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not going to stay up to watch it, but I think Woodley has a much better chance than Askren of beating him. The other thing with Ben Askren, he's a wrestler, an out-and-out wrestler. He was dominant in MMA for sort of lay and pray, sort of shooting in on the double leg and just grinding out his opponents over 15 or 25 minutes. Woodley's from that same wrestling background, but I was watching an interview with one of his coaches. Can't remember the name of the guy. Just completely had a blank. But from the time he came into MMA, his favorite thing to do, supposedly, in the different aspects of the training, and the one he spent the most time on is his boxing, and specifically like not sort of kickboxing, because of course you can throw kicks in cage fighting, but literal straight up boxing. So maybe he's got that slight advantage in the sense that he's been training for longer, much longer than Jake Paul, but he didn't look that good in his last 3 or 4 UFC fights. I think he consistently lost every round. When he lost his belt to Kamaru Usman, didn't win a single minute of that fight, got completely out-dominated. Got completely dominated, sorry. Can't remember who he fought after that, but it was another pretty devastating loss. Then he got finished by Colby Covington and Vicente Luque in his last 2 consecutive fights. But I don't know, he seems a lot more confident going into this one. And honestly, with the UFC's pay structure, I'm quite happy to see him get a payday, because it's quite criminal what to pay these guys in terms of comparisons to other sports. I think he said 16% of their budget goes towards fighter pay, or 16% of the turnover goes towards fighter pay. It's like 50% in the NFL and 45% in the NBA. So I don't know how that. But again, we wouldn't have the fights you want to see in MMA if a company like the UFC, like the premier company, didn't have sort of that monopoly on all the fighters. You wouldn't get them sort of put in, I don't know, Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic in a cage for 3 fights over the course of 3 years. But yeah, I hope Woodley wins for the face of MMA and the face of actual fighters. But Jake Paul's a powerful, he's got power, but he's knocked out a wrestler, a failed basketball player, and another YouTuber. So he's actually fighting a proper striker this time, to a degree, I'd say.
Usman is another one that he called out. And I said Canelo. Yeah. Usman was one of the other ones.
Put him to sleep. The way his striking's come on under Trevor Whitman, honestly. If you look at the first and second Masvidal fight, completely different fighter. And again, he's come from that wrestling background, so he's got that toughness ingrained in him. But if he thinks he's going to fight Canelo, he may as well order himself a coffin and a body bag to come out of the arena with, because he's just asking for trouble at that point.
Yeah. But yes, it'd be interesting the next 12 months with this Jake Paul circus. But I say it's got everybody talking about it. Even though we won't watch the fight, and it'd be interesting to see the result. But yeah,
like you said, that brings us fringe audience members into it, and they might start watching boxing for the rest of their life, or MMA for the rest of their life, or sort of as a casual from that sort of reeling them in. So it's good in that sense. But
yeah, that's a
circus around it.
No. But on that note, great to have you on, Baz. And
thanks for having us.
I think we might have to go back to Zoom from StreamYard, because there's been quite a bit. You paused quite a few times, Mart, as well on there. So we'll have to wait and see. But thanks for coming on, Baz. You've been listening to Randolph and Martin's Sport Talk, mainly football this week. So we'll try and get something else on the agenda for next week, apart from the Premier League. Hopefully there's something on in the world of sport, pardon the pun, Baz. And see you next week. Thanks very much.